Welcome back to Midas Defense. I'm Chris Goldsmith, Army combat veteran, president of Our Media Network, and executive producer of Hellcats. America loves to talk about honoring those who serve. But the real test of that promise isn't what politicians say at parades or on Veterans Day. It's what they do when service actually costs something. Right now, American troops are fighting in an increasingly costly war with Iran that Congress never authorized. At least 18 American service members have been killed as of this recording. In the first week or so after the supposed ceasefire ended in July, over 100 more had been wounded. And the Pentagon says it has already spent more than $37 billion on this conflict. Now, the Trump administration is asking Congress for tens of billions of dollars more, while diverting money away from training, maintenance, and weapons programs just to keep this war going. And the deficits that they're creating now will impact our national security for a decade or more. At the same time, Republicans in Congress recently pushed legislation that could have reduced disability compensation for future veterans with conditions like tinnitus and sleep apnea. And when the veterans of foreign wars fought back, 2 Republican congressmen asked the VA to investigate the VFW's accreditation, the very accreditation that allows them to represent disabled veterans to get the benefits that they earned from the VA. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth is blocking exceptionally qualified women from promotion into the Navy's senior ranks, including trailblazing officers who have already commanded at the highest levels, while finding time in the middle of a war to launch a new testosterone testing initiative. There's a common thread here. A country cannot demand sacrifice from people and then treat its obligation to them as optional. As Maura Sullivan puts it in this episode, a nation that cannot afford to take care of its veterans cannot afford to go to war. But this conversation also goes somewhere bigger. Service to this country has never belonged exclusively to those of us who wore a uniform. It happens in classrooms, hospitals, nonprofits, disaster zones, neighborhoods, and communities across America. And at a moment when so much of our politics is organized around what divides us, Maura and Rebecca make the case that rebuilding a culture of service might actually help bring us back together. Because the question shouldn't always be, what can I get? Sometimes it needs to be, what can I do? Here are Marine Corps veteran Maura Sullivan and Navy veteran Rebecca Bennett with episode 5 of Hellcats.
Pete Hegseth gave us a lot of material to talk about this week.
Oh my God.
And so it's really an embarrassment of riches, I would say, maybe just more an embarrassment. But yeah, so first thing I want to, talk to you about is, so folks didn't see this in the news, Pete Hegseth blocked yet another group of senior women admirals from getting promoted. So there were 7 senior Navy officers, 5 of whom were women or people of color. And this now means for the first time in more than a decade, no active duty female naval officers are going to get promoted to admiral. And I'll just say, for me, this is really personal. So one of the women that is getting blocked is Rear Admiral Bauer-Schmidt. She's a fellow helicopter pilot. She was the first woman that was able to command an aircraft carrier, which is an incredible responsibility. It's a 6-year training pipeline in order to be able to get to the position of being the CEO of an aircraft carrier. And so, we're just continuing to see this assault on women. What kills me about this is, in order to be the first, you have to be exceptional. And so the idea that we are taking these incredibly badass women that are incredible leaders, incredible trailblazers, and sidelining their careers just makes me so angry. But yeah, I would love to hear, what you think, what your reaction was.
Yeah, I mean, I had just a very similar reaction. First of all, I mean, this is not about, as we both know, this is not about what gender somebody is or what somebody looks like. This is about, Pete Hegseth is making our nation less safe. It's like he is so out of touch with this. He's so out of touch with the reality of warfighting and what it means to be on the front lines of our nation's fights and what actually matters, and it's having the best talent, period.
Well, speaking of other ridiculous things that happened this week, basically, we both thought this was a joke when we saw it first, but Pete Hegseth put out a video that he called the High T Department of War, and they are now mandating that everyone over 30 has to get tested for testosterone. And I legitimately, one, going back to military readiness, like what is even the point of this? How much is it going to cost? How much time is this going to take? I mean, it's going to be a massive undertaking for us to be able to do this, but it's also just really beyond parody. I mean, I just legitimately cannot even believe that it was real. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And also, by the way, my reaction when I saw this was, hey, we're at war. Maybe we should focus on that. Maybe we should focus on ending the conflict in the Middle East and not doing these ridiculous.
Exactly. I mean, what sort of tone does this set in the department? What does this do to morale? What the heck sort of, signal does this send again to women in the department? But again, the most salient part all comes back to, it's not like because it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. It is a distraction from fighting and winning our nation's wars. To your point, we are at war in the Middle East right now. We've had lots of discussions about whether we should or shouldn't be, but we are. And, if his 11 a.m. on a Tuesday in the Pentagon is about testosterone testing as opposed to, the strategy to degrade Iran's nuclear capability, then he's focused on the wrong things.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing, too, we see significantly higher infertility rates for women in the military than we've seen in the general population. IVF is still not covered under the VA, but erectile dysfunction medication is. And so I think it just continues to be this double standard of why are we spending time on this when we have women, veterans, and other people that need access to healthcare. But yeah, to your point, it's absolutely not the right thing that he should be prioritizing. He needs to be focused on making sure that our military has what they need and also that they're bringing an end to this conflict that we're seeing in the Middle East.
I had that thought as well with the recent threatened cuts to disabilities, or friends with disabilities at the VA, the still lack of coverage for fertility with, female veterans. And, I'm sure, keep coming back to something that is a really important, sort of statement, I think, to make, which is a nation that cannot afford to take care of its veterans.
Yes.
Cannot afford to go to war.
At the time of this recording, the legislation got pulled off the House floor, but the act itself was the Taking Benefits from America's Veterans Act. And basically the idea was that they were going to combine the Major Richard Starr Act with a couple of other things. And one of the things that would have been an outcome of this is that we would have seen veterans lose access to their disability benefits for tinnitus and sleep apnea. And, I have a disability rating with the VA. And one of the things I have a disability rating for is tinnitus because helicopters are very loud.
Yeah.
And being on an aircraft carrier is very loud.
Really loud.
And so I have hearing damage, like I do, and it comes up all the time. And so it's one of those things that we should not be taking benefits away from other service members to pay for benefits for other service members. So, I was glad to see that the bill got pulled off the floor, but I just think it's one of those things that this is why we need people in office that really have experienced this stuff and can be able to speak to it and give it credibility. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's exactly what you said, which is that if we can't pay for people when they come home, then, what are we doing?
Can't afford it.
Yeah.
Like plain and simple. And I was also very glad to see that bill pulled. And but, it is so telling and frustrating that it got as far as it did in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, you're potentially cutting disability benefits from veterans is, pretty sick and twisted. And those are benefits that, that our brothers and sisters in service earned. And we need to ensure that they can access them, period.
Yeah, it was also going to increase the funding for a GI Bill too. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff that they kind of like looped in there. So I'm glad that they pulled it. I mean, but I do think it's important that we continue to fight for this stuff for our veterans and service members for sure. And then the other thing that's just kind of in the news right now, I sound a little congested right now, but part of that is because I'm in New Jersey and we are having terrible air quality here because of the forest fires that are going on in Canada. I mean, this is the thing of what we're seeing with climate change, is that it's impacting our ability to have our kids go outside and play and make sure that, somebody on my team has asthma and they were saying that they're really getting impacted by this. And so this is when we talk about climate change, like this is what we're talking about is, just the impact.
In our community, we also see other signs of climate change damage. Our beaches here on the New Hampshire seacoast, we've seen erosion on the beaches. We saw flooding in one of our downtown parks. And, as a veteran, I think a lot about climate change as a threat to national security. And we have here, our Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, which is literally down the street from where I'm sitting right now, which is part of the $100 billion, of course, of coastal assets within the Department of Defense, which are under threat from rising sea levels. One of many, many threats to national security that is, something that we have to be incredibly vigilant about and build up resilience to.
To your point, I think it's also about we need to make sure that we are investing in grid, modernization, resiliency, that we're really making sure our infrastructure is prepared for the more severe storms that we're going to see right now because of what we're seeing with climate change. So it's absolutely something that we need to do. And it's absolutely a national security threat because all the Navy bases are famously by the water. And so, we need to make sure that we still can use them. Yeah.
Well, I was, on that note again of climate change as a threat to national security, I was really proud to be in the Pentagon team in 2015, which was the first time that climate change was included in the NSS, the National Security Strategy, as a threat to national security, and worked for the Secretary of the Navy and the Navy Marine Corps team. And one of the things that I was really proud that we did was introduce what was called the Great Green Fleet, which was introducing biofuels to a fleet of Navy ships around the world.
I flew with the Great Green. I flew with this.
I didn't know that. You're kidding me.
I did. Yeah, I did. It was during RIMPAC, which for folks that are watching, it's like I think it's the biggest naval exercise in the world. If not, it's one of the biggest. And you basically have all these countries, and we go out off the coast of Hawaii and do a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I flew with the Great Green Fleet, had the stickers on the side of my helicopter. It was like a whole thing.
That is so
it was very exciting.
I can't believe we never figured that out before this.
We want to talk about this idea of service today. And, I think what ideas and moments of service that we've had in our community that inspire us and that, you're proud of. And so, and I think just this idea of how we can continue to be of service in our country and not necessarily just military service, but thinking more broadly about how can we get more people involved and, being able to serve.
I think the role that service has played in each of our lives and certainly leading us to what we're doing now and how transformative it has been. And one of the things in this challenging, I guess is the word, environment that we face in our country that I think gives me so much hope in terms of the country moving forward and bringing people together is the idea of expanding national service. And I think of it as sort of the triple bottom line, if you will. Like there's three great things happen. The individual who can earn money for college by, being willing to serve, not only has that opportunity for themselves, but is transformed by serving. And then second, our communities gain these young leaders and the next generation of leaders at, nonprofits, in schools or in medical clinics or in, clean tech jobs within our communities around our country. And then third, and kind of the highest level is that, our country gains a better culture of civic responsibility. And, what can I do for our country? What can we do for our country as opposed to, what's next for me? And I think America could use a little bit of that right now.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I think for me, I totally agree. And I think it's this idea of if we can get people out of their bubbles and get to know people, I think that's one of the beauties of the military is truly this mixing pot of people from all over the country and all backgrounds and all walks of life. And so the idea of being able to get more people to go be part of something bigger than they are, get to know people from different parts of the country, and to be able to do that mission-driven work, I think is just incredibly important. And I think it's a great opportunity.
Maura and Rebecca leave us with a simple challenge. Don't just point at what's wrong. Decide how you're going to help make it better. Service doesn't require a uniform. It can mean teaching, organizing, mentoring, volunteering, running for office, or showing up for your community. Democracy depends on people choosing responsibility over apathy and choosing to be part of something bigger than themselves. Hellcats is produced by Lauren Hust at Public Square Media in partnership with Valor Media Network and is brought to you by Meidas Defense. If you're enjoying Hellcats, make sure you subscribe to Meidas Plus for full episodes. Follow the podcast on your favorite app and share this episode with someone who needs to hear this. I'm Chris Goldsmith. Thanks for watching.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.